The sun crested over the ridgeline like it had for generations, spilling golden light across the terraced fields of Halden Valley. Rows of wheat swayed gently in the early morning breeze, casting long shadows over the earth. To any outsider, this place was nothing more than a forgotten pocket of farmland tucked between rugged hills and sleepy villages. But those who lived there knew the land held more than just soil and seed. Ira had risen before dawn, as always. Her hands were already calloused from the sickle, her boots muddy from the irrigation channels she walked daily. At 19, she carried herself with the quiet strength of someone who understood hardship intimately. To the other villagers, she was simply Revan's girl, the orphaned daughter of a war widow and the last of her line. She smiled politely when spoken to, sold eggs and onions at the market, and asked for nothing. No one suspected that Ira hid a rifle beneath the floorboards. She had found it 2 years earlier, buried near the northern tree line, rusted and wrapped in oilskin. At first, she had planned to turn it in to the village watch, but something in her hesitated. It wasn't just a weapon, it was a story, a relic, a secret waiting to be understood. So she cleaned it in secret, studied it under the moonlight, and taught herself how to fire it. Her mother's journals, hidden away in a loose stone behind the hearth, revealed more than just prayers and recipes. They told of skirmishes, patrols, coded messages, and a war that was never officially declared. The region had long been plagued by rumors of covert military activity, clandestine operations against rebel groups, illegal land seizures, entire villages relocated under the cover of darkness. But in Halden Valley, such talk was dismissed as conspiracy. After all, nothing ever happened there. Nothing ever changed until that night. It began with strange lights in the forest. Ira saw them while returning from the stream. Drones, maybe. She crouched in the brush and watched as unmarked vehicles moved silently through the trees. Men in black uniforms, no insignia, no words, emerged and moved with frightening coordination. They weren't from the valley. They weren't from any official branch Ira recognized. These were ghosts in flesh. That same night, the village elder, Marin, disappeared. They said he must have wandered off. He was old, confused, nearing the edge of his years. But Ira had seen him the night before, clear-headed and sharp-eyed, whispering to a courier on the edge of the barley fields. Something was happening. Something big. She began to watch, to map, to record. At night, she tracked their movements, from the hills with her rifle and her scope. She noted drop points, radio chatter, patterns in patrol routes. She memorized faces, scarred, tired, all strangers. These men weren't just here for surveillance. They were building something, transporting equipment, creating tunnels or caches deep underground. A hidden war was unfolding in her backyard, and no one would believe her unless she brought the truth into daylight. One night, as she crouched atop a ridge, her breath misting in the cold air, she saw something that made her blood run cold. A convoy for black trucks, headlights killed, escorting a line of bound prisoners. They were blindfolded, limping and gagged. Civilians, locals, one of them, she realized with a jolt, was Joran, the boy who worked at the seed store. Her fingers trembled on the trigger. She couldn't shoot. Not yet. She needed evidence, proof, that couldn't be buried or denied. As the trucks rolled into the ravine below, Ira adjusted her scope and began recording with the small lens she'd built into the rifle's side rail. Every frame burned into her memory. She would show them all, show the world that she was more than just a farmer's daughter. She was her mother's child, and the war that took her mother was not over. The dawn brought a cold clarity, slicing through Ira's exhaustion like a sharpened blade. Her eyes, heavy from hours spent tracking the convoy, were now wide open with a single purpose: to wake the village. She had hoped the evidence she'd recorded, the blurred images of prisoners and trucks, would be enough to rally help. But when she showed the grainy footage to the village council, they turned away. Fear, denial, and resignation shadowed their faces. "Ira, this isn't our fight," whispered old Rurik, the grizzled blacksmith, avoiding her gaze. "We tend the land. We live quietly. Let the soldiers and their wars be." But Ira couldn't let it go. The whispered rumors, the missing elder, and the sight of prisoners bound in darkness were not distant threats. They were here, in Halden Valley, bleeding life into the soil. That evening, she met with Joran's sister Lissa, whose grief was as raw as the cracked earth beneath their feet. "They took him. They took my brother," she said, voice trembling but fierce. "And if we don't act, they'll take more." Together, they hatched a plan, not of open rebellion, but of resistance. Ira gathered the trusted few, hunters, farmers, the quiet ones who had seen too much and said too little. They called themselves the Watchers. With her rifle, her knowledge of the land, and their courage, they pledged to uncover the full scope of the secret war. Over the following nights, they scouted the enemy's camps. Ira learned to move like the shadows, silent, unseen, deadly if needed. She shared her mother's notes with the group, piecing together forgotten tactics and hidden codes that the invaders had overlooked. Their first mission was simple but perilous: to rescue prisoners from a guarded holding pit concealed beneath an old barn near the river. The Watchers waited until the guards' patrol thinned, then struck under cover of darkness. Ira's rifle barked once, sending a warning shot that froze the guards in place. The others moved fast, cutting ropes and dragging the weak into the night. It was a small victory, but it lit a fire. Word spread through the valley like wildfire. They were no longer just farmers and villagers, they were fighters. And the secret war was no longer hidden. The valley wasn't just a backdrop for a hidden war, it was a landscape of history. Scars etched deep into the earth, and souls alike. Ira had always known her mother's stories weren't mere folklore. They were memories, passed down with pain and purpose. Now, as the Watchers grew bolder, those memories became their guide. Late one evening, huddled around a fire beneath a canopy of stars, Ira shared a secret her mother had kept locked away. A forgotten battle fought decades ago, in the very hills they called home. It was a war between the valley's people and an oppressive regime, one that had tried to claim the land by force. "The valley remembers," Ira whispered, her voice steady despite the weight of the tale. "Our ancestors fought not just for soil, but for freedom, and we must do the same." Her words ignited a spark in the group. They realized this wasn't just a fight for survival, it was a fight to reclaim their identity. But the past was never far behind. One night, while scouting near an abandoned watchtower, Ira stumbled upon a faded photograph of her mother, young and defiant, standing alongside men in uniform. It was a clue, a key to unraveling the tangled web of alliances and betrayals that had led to this war. Determined to uncover the truth, Ira set out to find those who remembered. She sought out an old friend of her mother's, a man named Thane, who had vanished years before. Finding him was no easy task. He lived in the shadow of the mountains, a hermit haunted by loss and regret. When Ira finally confronted him, he was reluctant to speak, but seeing the rifle slung over her shoulder, the same model he once carried, broke through his defenses. He told her stories of covert operations, secret pacts, and the betrayal that fractured their people. He spoke of a betrayal so deep it threatened to destroy the valley from within. Armed with new knowledge and a growing resolve, Ira realized the war she faced wasn't just with an external enemy, it was also a battle against the shadows in her own history. As the Watchers prepared for their next mission, Ira felt the weight of her mother's legacy settle firmly on her shoulders. This was no longer just about survival, it was about reclaiming the soul of the valley. The valley's fragile peace shattered with the crack of gunfire. Word spread fast. The secret war was becoming a visible conflict. Ira's small band of Watchers faced their first true test. The enemy had grown aware of their resistance, tightening patrols and setting traps. One night, as the moon hung low, Ira's group was ambushed near the old mill. The attackers were ruthless, their black uniforms blending with the shadows. Ira's rifle barked again and again, each shot precise, buying time for the others to retreat. But not all made it out. Lissa was hit, her leg shattered by a sniper's bullet. The group dragged her to safety. But the cost was clear. This war would demand more than courage. It would require sacrifice. The villagers, once hesitant, now looked to Ira and her band as protectors. Mothers whispered their names when the wind blew cold. Children watched from windows, their eyes wide with a mixture of fear and hope. Ira knew the fight had changed. It was no longer about exposing a hidden war. It was about defending their homes and their lives. That night, she stood alone on the ridge overlooking the valley, her rifle heavy in her hands. The stars seemed distant, and the weight of leadership pressed on her like never before. But in that quiet moment, she made a vow: no matter the cost, she would protect her people and uncover the truth behind the enemy's dark intentions, because, in the soil beneath her feet, and in the blood of her ancestors, the valley's future was written. The Watchers needed answers. Ira knew the key to ending the conflict lay not just in fighting, but in understanding the enemy's motives. With Lissa recovering but still weak, Ira led a small team deep into the Forbidden Zone, the heart of the enemy's operation hidden beneath the shadow of the Blackstone Ridge. The terrain was treacherous, marked by scars of excavation and armed sentries lurking behind every rock. As they moved carefully through the tunnels carved into the earth, Ira's mind raced. What were they hiding? Weapons? Prisoners? Something worse. In the depths, they found a complex network of underground bunkers, walls lined with maps, documents, and radio equipment. But the most chilling discovery was a ledger detailing a covert program. One designed to displace and silence entire communities under the guise of security. Among the files, Ira found names of villagers, including Marin, the missing elder. Her blood ran cold. The war was not just about control of land. It was about erasing identities, histories, and futures. Armed with this damning evidence, Ira and her team retreated under the cover of darkness. Their hearts heavy but their resolve stronger. They now held the power to expose the war, not as a secret, but as a crime. But the enemy was watching, and they were ready to strike back. The village was restless. The air thick with tension, whispers of rebellion threaded through the streets like smoke. Ira knew the enemy would not wait. They had been discovered, their secrets laid bare, and now retaliation was inevitable. Under a moonless sky, the watchers prepared. Supplies were gathered, weapons readied, and plans refined. Ira's rifle, once a hidden relic, had become a symbol of hope. That night, the enemy struck first. Flames erupted near the granary as black-clad soldiers descended upon the village. Screams shattered the silence. Homes burned in cruel tongues of fire. Ira stood in the center of the chaos, her rifle steady, eyes blazing with fierce determination. She fired into the advancing soldiers, buying precious moments for villagers to escape. The battle was brutal and swift, but the watchers fought with the desperation of those who had everything to lose. When the dawn broke, the village was scarred, but unbroken. Lissa, now able to stand, helped tend to the wounded. Children huddled close, eyes wide but alive. Ira walked through the ruins, feeling the weight of loss but also the strength of survival. She knew this was just the beginning. The secret war had been forced into the light, and now it was a fight for the very soul of Halden Valley. The valley stirred with the first light of morning, smoke still rising from the night's battle scars. But amidst the destruction, a new hope was born. Ira stood before the gathered villagers, her rifle slung over her shoulder, eyes burning with resolve. The watchers had become more than a resistance, they were the heart of a movement. With the evidence she'd uncovered, the videos, the documents, the testimonies, Ira reached beyond Halden Valley. She sent the truth to journalists, human rights groups, and the distant cities where power slept. The world listened, international pressure mounted, investigations began. The secret war was no longer a shadow whispered in the dark but a glaring headline in the light of day. But more importantly, the people of Halden Valley reclaimed their voice. Rebuilding started with tears and sweat, but it was fueled by a shared vow. Never again would they be invisible. Never again would their lives be pawns in a hidden war. Ira looked out over the fields, the same quiet fields, where her story began, and felt the weight of legacy settle. Like a cloak, they had thought she was just a farmer's daughter, but with her rifle and her courage, she had brought down a secret war. And in doing so, she had ignited a fire that would burn long after the last bullet was fired.